Okay, just taking up where Rosemary left off there about how do we actually do it. For us as Dominicans, if we wear the habit, then every outing is an adventure. And I would certainly recommend that. That in itself opens the way to evangelization. I'd prefer not to be talking about the media at all, because I don't have much faith in them. But anyway, let me start with a story about a fellow and a girl, and they fell in love. And shortly after that, the guy had to go away for a year doing military service or something. So he promised he would write to the girl every day. And sure enough, a few days later, the first letter arrived. I think this was in pre-email times. But anyway, the first letter arrived, and then the next day, the postman was back with another letter, and the next day, back again with another letter. And eventually the year passed, and the two of them got married, the girl and the postman. In other words, it was the personal contact that did the trick. Communications were not the secret. It's the personal contact. And so on that basis, I would say that in terms of the media, I would expect very little from the media. Just one other story about personal contact. I was in Medjugorje recently, and Maria, one of the visionaries, was speaking, gave an excellent talk and so on. But anyway, that evening at tea in the house, one of the ladies in our group just said, "Isn't it great to be a Catholic?" And that set me thinking, and I've got loads of homilies from that since she said that. Because, of course, it is wonderful to be a Catholic. It's the greatest thing in the world. But why aren't we telling people? And that can only be done by an individual, one-to-one basis. When we go into work tomorrow, why not say, "Isn't it great to be a Catholic?" And even if you're not working in the U2000 office, why not say it? Coming back to the media, my topic, I think, am I starting now? Yeah. Coming back to the media, my topic, round about the 1870s, and for about 60 years or so after that, there was a huge movement of secularization in the United States. It wasn't a coordinated thing, it just, whatever kind of a perfect storm, so to speak, came together. And lots of areas were secularized. College education was secularized, primary and secondary level education were secularized, science was secularized, the law was secularized, a whole range of areas were secularized, including the media. And there were many factors involved in this secularization. It wasn't even just simply a secularization, it was kind of nearly an anti-Christianization that went on. But it was, one of the main things in it was a kind of revolt against a liberal Protestantism that was more or less the taken for granted ideology of the time. And as I say, through various factors, this secularization went on. At the beginning of the 1870s, the New York Times, for example, was very supportive of Christianity, at least of this version of Christianity. By the 1920s, it had turned completely. certainly by the 1930s. It had turned completely. And in many ways, as I say, it was a revolt against this secular Protestantism, or this liberal Protestantism, but I don't want to get into the meaning of the word liberal there, but they thought that in revolting against this, they were revolting against Christianity as such. And that the option was between Christianity and a kind of a godlessness, an atheism or whatever. And that ideology took very firm root in so many different institutions. I was reading a book recently about Canon Sheehan of Doneraile, and he was friendly with Wendell Holmes, who was a member of the American Supreme Court, Supreme Court Justice. He used to come to Cork at times. But Wendell Holmes was an atheist and had a profound impact on secularizing the whole legal system in the States. But anyway, as I say, that's just part of the thing. Now, the course of secularization in Europe was very different to what it was in the States. It seems to me, however, that in Ireland we have been greatly influenced by what happened in the States. The Irish Times think that thinking means reading the New York Times. And so if the New York Times says this is the way things are, then for a large extent for the Irish Times, that's the way things are. And then RTE kind of read the Irish Times because that's where they get their ideas. And then they are absorbing this thing. Now with the internet, I suppose they can go more directly to the source of this ideology. But it means that Irish media, and I'm talking about the national media, and to some extent even the local media, print and broadcast, are dominated by a secularist ideology. People have been using the idea of groupthink, and that's valid too. It's whether you call it ideology or groupthink. So we're not kind of, the issue is not so much the media and the church. The issue is the ideology that dominates the media and the church. And as long as this ideology continues in the media, it's going to be very hard to see how the media can be used as for evangelization. How we change it, I'm not sure, but maybe it's going to be when evangelical Catholics get into the media and have a role. That's part of the thing. So that's all I'm going to say on that. The problem about the media is practically every statement you make, you can find evidence to back it, even if these statements contradict each other. So it's very difficult talking about the media as such. Let me just say a word about Alive. I started Alive as an attempt to reach those who no longer come to church. The Archbishop has been talking on a number of occasions about sensationalism in the Catholic press or the Catholic media. Now, news of its nature has to be sensational. That's the way it is. But there can be two types of sensational. You can misrepresent a story. You can distort it or you can tell lies in order to be sensational, or rather in order to get attention. or you can try and arouse the curiosity of the person in order to get their attention. And we do it all the time. You say to somebody, "Did you hear what your man said?" Now, before we've said anything about what he said, we are sensationalizing the story. Or do you know what your man did? So we are trying to awaken in the person the desire to know. And sensationalism in the media, I think, has a certain valid role in trying to arouse interest in the story that we have to tell, in that sense of trying to awaken curiosity. In the Alive paper, what I'm trying to do, basically two things. One is to try and put forward the Catholic faith as reasonably and as attractively as possible. To try and give people a sense of confidence, a sense of joy, a sense of hope, whatever it might be. Both Catholics and those who are lapsed Catholics, or whatever it is. The other thing I'm trying to do in the Alive is to take on the this ideology of despair that is so prevalent in our culture. And in terms of that side of the Alive paper, then my attitude is, if there's a fight on, I want to be in it. That we have something to offer, and we've got to be out there offering it. And people that are selling a dummy thing, we've got to expose them as charlatans. And that, to a large extent, is the ideology of the media. And I'm just going to finish on one thing, whether the media are good or bad. There was a program on BBC the other night called Truckers, I think. Just came in on it by accident. It's a series that's going on, a kind of a drama. And there was, at the point that we came in on the thing, a girl was talking to her boyfriend, cohabiting, of course, and so on. But she was telling him that she had been unfaithful to him in some way. I won't go into the details. But she wanted to let him know because she wanted to have an honest, open relationship with him. And he, needless to say, didn't think this was a very good approach to relationship. So he made whatever points he had to make. And then she replied, and she said something like, "Look, we're going to be dead for a long time. In fact, once we die, that's the end of everything. We are dead forever. And we have one opportunity to have happiness, and that is here and now." And she said, "I am going to be happy, and I am going to do what is necessary to be happy. You," she said, "are afraid of going after happiness. Well, I am not. I am going to grab happiness wherever I can get it." Now, it was put much better than that. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the text of it, but that was the gist of it. And it struck me, here is a marvelous expression of the culture of despair, the culture of hopelessness that dominates our culture at the present time. The ideology of hopelessness that dominates our culture. Now, later on in the program, it was obvious that the scriptwriter was trying to reject that view, but he wasn't able really to escape from it because he himself, it's part of his own thinking without him even wanting it to be. And here is, I mean, do you say that that's a good thing by the media that they presented it this way, or a bad thing? For some people, they would have heard that girl speaking and said, dead on, kind of go for it, girl. And others would have said, that's really what's wrong with our culture. That's really what's wrong with our society. Media, good or bad, I don't know. But it's there to be used. It's not the media as such. The media, as the very name says, are instruments. It is up to us to find ways to use them to bring the good news to other people.